Over the last few years in the Championship, we have been lucky enough to see some truly brilliant loan players, and this season has been no different. So the challenge that we're going to be taking on in today's video is to build the best Championship 11 made up of only loan players. But the caveat is, I can only use one player per club, and it makes for some interesting squad building. I want to get your guys' teams down below. Who do you think should make it in there? And when you apply the one loanee per team rule, it does make it particularly tricky when a side has an abundance of loan talents there. I've made my best attempt at 11 though, and without any further ado, let's jump into it. Starting out in goal, I've gone with Carl Darlow. There were a few others that I was considering, Ethan Horvath in at Luton, Zach Stefan in at Middlesbrough, but I've got a couple of other loanees from those clubs further up the pitch who I was also considering. So Carl Darlow, I think, is quite the sensible pick here. Been a good addition for Hull, signed from Newcastle in the January window, and there's every chance they get him on a permanent basis going into next season as well. To be honest, I think that Hull have been really quite blessed with some good goalkeepers over this season. They had Nathan Baxter first half of the season, who I still think's got a really bright future in the game. Even Matt Ingram, when he's filled in, I think he's done really good in terms of the shot stopping ability, but you can tell the Premier League experience that Darlow brings to this whole side. Generally speaking, under a senior so far, their defence has been their strong suit as well, and with all that experience in there, I think he's the obvious pick for my goalkeeping department with my loanee 11. In a right back, I've gone for Ethan Laird, who's had an interesting season. I certainly thought that in those first couple of months with Beale, while QPR were flying, Laird was one of the outstanding fullbacks in the Championship. His creative numbers backed that up, and when QPR were really going for sides on top and scoring a lot of goals, he was such a viable asset down that right hand side. There's no doubt been a little bit of a regression in performances as the whole QPR squad have dipped down in confidence. There's no doubt that Laird's also been affected by that, but I still think he's got a massive future in the game, and at just 21 years old, I think he's still the sensible pick for me at right back. And then as my first centre half, I think Charlie Cresswell has to make my side. Been really impressed with him this season, of course on loan from Leeds at Millwall. They've got a couple of Leeds loanees in at the Den this season, but Cresswell especially has really impressed me, and I wouldn't be overly surprised if he was in and around the Leeds first team next season, obviously depending on what their circumstances are and what sort of league they're playing in. But Cresswell this season had an eye for a goal, but defensively so been really solid and part of one of the best defensive units in the Championship this season with that Millwall squad. Next to him in my back line, I'm going to go for Austin Trusty on loan from Arsenal in at Birmingham. There were a few other defenders who I was considering for this second centre-half spot. We've got a lot of great defenders currently on loan in the Championship, but a few of them I couldn't pick because I've selected players from their clubs further up the pitch, and I think that Trusty is more than deserving of his spot in this team. Actually gone a little bit under the radar perhaps because Birmingham haven't been involved in the top 6 chase this season or properly embellished in the relegation zone or anything like that, but Trusty's done about his business really well this season. Another defender who's had a real eye for goal this season, but his defensive performances have also been really good. And I'm fascinated to see what the future holds for him really, because he's 24 years old on loan from Arsenal. I'm not sure I can see him making it in the Arsenal first team with the trajectory of that side at the moment, but wherever he does end up after this season, I think whoever picks him up on a permanent basis, you're getting a cracking defender as he's shown this season. We've got some top left backs on loan in the Championship, but of course I had to go for Preston's Alvaro Fernandez on loan from Manchester United. This has been his first proper taste of senior football. He came up through the Real Madrid academy originally, was then poached by Man United, and I've absolutely loved watching him this season. I think he's been a really good fit into this 3-5-2 system that we play as that left wing back, and steadily has improved his defensive game throughout the season. I think that was a particular vulnerability with him early on, but one thing that's never been in doubt is he's just a born entertainer. The one of maybe two Preston players who can properly get you up and out your seat, can go past the player. His vision's fantastic, and getting to watch him on a weekly basis has been one of the most enjoyable things from a Preston fan's perspective this season. I'd absolutely love it if we were able to get him back on loan for another loan spell next season, but something tells me that some clubs further up the footballing ladder may be interested in him. But yeah, Alvaro Fernandez, absolutely love the guy, and he's been brilliant on that left side for us this season. In as my first holding midfielder, I'm going to go for Marvellous Nakamba in at Luton on loan from Aston Villa. And sometimes you just get a Premier League loanee like someone like Nakamba, who's 29 years old, been around the block and has that real pedigree about him, and you can just see he's added that touch of class to Luton's midfield in this second half of the season. Whenever I've caught Millwall in this second half of the season, Nakamba's always been someone who's really stood out to me. So far in the Championship, averaging 4.1 tackles per game, which is absolutely huge. His impact off the ball is absolutely massive, but also a really tidy operator on the ball as well. And what he's added to that Luton squad from January onwards, I think is notable and definitely a worthy addition into this loanee side. And thanks to the loan players that Stoke added in the January window, they've been able to really change around their fortunes, and there's a lot more positivity around the club right now. Ben Pearson was always going to make it into this team, and I'm fascinated to see what the future does hold for him. You know, if Bournemouth are to be relegated back down to the Championship, suddenly does he have a future there again, or is he going to make a permanent move to Stoke or somewhere else? Whatever the case may be, all I know is that Ben Pearson is still such a classy operator in the Championship. One of my favourite players that I've seen in the Preston shirt of all time. Really absolutely love the guy, and I think that since going over to Bournemouth, he's added a little bit to his game, but has been sort of a little bit more injury prone. So I think this move to Stoke has been really beneficial to him, just to get that regular game time and rhythm back in his legs. But him at the base of that Stoke midfield, I think he's been absolutely fantastic this season. And to be honest, there were quite a few Stoke loanees who I could have included in this video, but Pearson's really caught my eye since January, and given some of the other positions that were already filled, I think he was my obvious pick in at centre mid. On the right hand side, I had plenty of options, but realistically I had to go for Amad Diallo. In terms of how good someone can be at their peak, Diallo this season has just been absolutely flawless at times, particularly in the months of, I think it was November and December in particular, where he was properly shining. Every game seemed to get a goal contribution, and there'd be a compilation coming out on Twitter of some of the unbelievable skills he'd done in the match and dribbling and things like that. But you can tell this season why Man United spent so much money on him. Obviously that loan move he had prior to this one at Rangers didn't quite click on all fronts, but this season in the Championship I think he's been a joy to watch at times. Some other players who I was considering on that right hand side, Marquinhos in at Norwich, but we've probably not seen enough of him in on loan from Norwich. Obviously Josh Bowler in at Blackpool as well, but another player who we've not quite seen enough of. And Suba Thomas, who I've also been fairly impressed with in at Blackburn, but over the course of a full season, Diallo has to take that spot on the right side. In as the number 10, I've gone for James McAtee of Sheffield United. Plenty of other options in this area as well, but I think especially in this second half of the season, he's really proved his worth to this Sheffield United squad with some real clutch moments, not just in terms of goal contributions, but his overall game. And since he's been a bit more of a regular starter over these last few months, I think he's elevated his game, but he's also helped a lot of the other players around him who sort of had a bit of a drop off in form at a similar time when he really came into his own. I think that sort of thing is really indispensable. Other players who I was considering for this role, Rudi Kadra in at Blues, been impressed with this season. Paveda, another one from Blackpool who's been good. Will Smallbone definitely deserves a shout for this one, but because I've already included a player from Stoke, I couldn't get him into this 11. But all things considered, yeah, he's a worthy member of this side. On the left hand side, I had to go for Nathan Tella on loan at Burnley from Southampton, and I'm fascinated to see what the future holds for him. Don't get me wrong, there were some other Burnley loanees who I wanted to include in this video, and had I not done the one player per team rule, I would have got in the likes of Harwood Bellis, who's been fantastic, Ian Maxton, who's been brilliant at left back as well. But Nathan Tella this season to be the top scorer in this Burnley side, who's walked the Championship this season, played some great football along the way, and it's really felt like in the case of Tella that he's just got better as the season's gone on. Listen, I saw it firsthand just how clinical he can actually be. I was at Turf Moor when Burnley put 3 goals past us, and it was Tella who scored each of them, the first hat-trick he scored of the season, and he's just been absolutely clinical. Like I say, got better as the season's gone on, and I mean, all the wingers that Burnley have been fantastic in their own right. You know, Zorore's brilliant 1v1. Manuel Samuel Benson's just like lightning in a bottle, but Teller especially feels like he has that extra clinical edge about him, and the fact that he's one of the top scorers playing on that left-hand side just speaks to how good he's been this season. And then to finish off my Championship loanees 11, I have gone for Cameron Archer up front. Don't get me wrong, in a similar instance to Burnley, there were plenty of other Middlesbrough loanees who I would have put in this 11 had I not done the one player per team rule, but looking through all the strikers who are currently out on loan in the Championship, I think that Archer is the sort of obvious choice really. I got to see it second half of last season just how good he was at North End, and it was typically served up his best performance so far in the Middlesbrough shirt for that game against my side North End when Middlesbrough put 4 goals past us. But Archer, his link-up play's been really clever, playing off the last man and that link-up he's had with Akpom. I think when you give him a chance in front of goal more often than not, he is hitting the back of the net, and at just 21 years old, one of the most natural finishers we've got in the Championship. I think he's got a huge career ahead of him. I think that's in the Premier League, to be honest, not in the Championship. But guys, there we have it. That will wrap it up for today's video. As you can see on screen there is my Championship loanee team of the season, only including one player per club. Make sure to remember that when making your sides down below. Which loanees have impressed you particularly at your clubs though? I'd be interested to know. And apart from that guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go and enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Apart from that guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.